Hey friends, it's Lisa Mears here. Thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm going to be working with some new products from Scrap Diva Designs May release to make this sewing machine shaped card. So the products that I'll be using today include this sewing machine mini album die set. So you can use this die set to make a mini album, or you can use it to make a shaped card like I will be doing today. And I'll also be using the open petal flowers. There are 3 different size flowers on there, and I'll be using the sewing stamps. There are a total of 7 stamps that say I'm so awesome, I'd rather be sewing, I'm not messy, I'm creatively organized, cut, pin, sew, repeat, I can totally make that. Beautiful things come together one stitch at a time. And then there's also a stamp that says handmade by. You can put that on the back of your cards and then you can sign your name. These are just a few of the products that are in the new Scrap Diva release. I do encourage you to take a look over on their website to see all of the fun products in this release. And if you're interested in purchasing anything, use my coupon code Lisa Mears to save 10% on your order. So for my card, I'm going to be using the Bouquet paper pad from scrapbook.com. There are so many pretty floral prints in this paper pad, and I love all the bright, cheery colors. I'm going to be using a hot pink floral print, which is this page here. And I'm going to coordinate that with this blue solid. That's going to be my accent color. So when we look at the die set, there are 3 large dies that are included. The largest shadow die I'm going to set aside for right now, and I'm only going to work with the shadow die that has the stitching on it and the sewing machine die. And I'm going to die cut the pink floral paper with the sewing machine die, and then I'll be die cutting the shadow die with the blue solid paper. So I die cut them off camera, and this is what they look like once they're die cut. So you have the sewing machine shape, and then you have the shadow layer that's in the blue, and those 2 are just going to layer on top of each other. But before I do that, I want to take another piece of, this time, gold mirror cardstock, and I die cut just that piece that has the needle on the sewing machine, and I'm going to just snip off the part of that gold cardstock that I do not need, and I'm going to add that gold piece right on top of the pink floral print, exactly where it goes. So I'm just going to layer that on top. So I'll bring this close so you can see what that looks like, and I'm going to have some more gold accents throughout this card. So now let's take out some more of these layering dies. I have the skinny rectangle dies. There are 2 of them. I die cut them out of the same gold mirror cardstock, and those go at the bottom of the sewing machine. You can see that this first one here, I'm just going to align it with the edge there of the sewing machine and then press that down, and then there's another skinny rectangle that's going to go at the very bottom of the sewing machine. So I'll go ahead and line that up with the bottom edge and press that down as well. And then the die for the hand wheel, I also die cut out of gold mirror cardstock, and I'll add that to the sewing machine as well. Next, I use this die, and the very top of that die there are 2 small rectangles, and those are the top and bottom of the spool of thread. So I'm going to go ahead and add those to the top and bottom of the thread that is attached to the sewing machine. And again, I die cut those also out of the gold mirror cardstock. That same die has 2 circle dies attached, and this is the knob that goes on the front of the sewing machine. I die cut the larger circle out of the gold mirror cardstock, and then the smaller circle out of the blue floral paper, which is the reverse of the blue solid that I'm going to use for the shadow layer. So I'm just going to attach those 2 pieces together, and then I'm going to attach the circle to the front of the sewing machine. There is another die included that is a little bit of a thicker rectangle than the two skinny ones at the bottom. I die cut that also with the blue floral pattern paper, and I'm going to add that piece between those two gold rectangles. And I think what this one is for, because there's a hole in the center of it, which you can't really see on camera, but I think that's a little drawer that they included there at the bottom of the sewing machine. At least that's what it looks like to me, so I'm going to go with that. And a little bit later, I'll be adding an embellishment to cover up that hole, which would be the knob for the drawer. So before I attach this to the blue shadow layer, I want to add some thread around the spool of thread. Of course, you don't have to do this step, but I had some thread on hand and I thought it would be super cute just to add some white thread around this piece to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I took the loose pieces and I'm just going to bring them down on the back of the sewing machine and use some tape to adhere them to the back of that sewing machine die cut shape. Next, I'm going to take that entire piece and I'll add it to the blue shadow layer. I'm going to remove the backing off that double-sided tape and just put glue all over the back of that die cut. I also put glue on the back of that thread because I will be pressing that down onto that shadow layer as well. That's starting to look so pretty. I love those colors. Next, I'm going to use the open petal flower die set. There are 3 different sizes. There's a large flower, a medium flower, and a small flower. And I'm only going to use the medium and small flowers for this card. I'm using the scrapbook.com classic glossy cardstock that comes in the black and the white glossy, and I die cut the medium flower, and then I used the scrapbook.com Sherbet Paper Pad for the smaller flower and die cut those out of the light pink cardstock. And I'm just going to take some pink ink and add some pink ink to the edges of those petals on the pink cardstock. These flowers do layer on top of each other, so I'm just adding some glue to the center of the pink flower and pressing it onto the white flower. So I'm going to have a total of 2 flowers for my card. These flowers also have centers, and I die cut them out of some yellow cardstock, and I'll glue the centers onto the flowers. I didn't glue down the entire petal because I want to be able to raise those petals to add some depth to the card. I'm going to go ahead and add those flowers to my sewing machine. I'm making sure not to cover up the open center of the sewing machine because I want to add a sentiment there or a stamp. And I'm just going to put those flowers just above that open section. And I'll put them next to each other. And next I'm going to work on the sentiment. So I'm going to use the sewing stamps, and the sentiment I'm using is the Cut, Pin, Sew, Repeat. I die cut a circle die, and then I'm going to stamp that sentiment right on top of that circle. I am going to be doing some embossing with some gold embossing powder. So first I'm going to add some powder to the cardstock so that when I add the gold embossing powder, it does not stick where there's no embossing powder. And I'm using the Versamark ink to stamp the stamp down to the cardstock. And I'm going to sprinkle on some of the Princess Gold embossing powder from Ranger. Just cover up that entire stamp, and then I'm going to put the excess back in the jar. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and I'm going to heat set that embossing powder. So I'm just going to run the heat tool onto the cardstock, and you can see that that gold embossing powder, it slowly will melt and it will become really shiny. So I chose to use that gold embossing powder because it does bring out the gold and all of the other accents that are on the sewing machine. So I'm going to add that sentiment right in that open area of the sewing machine. Press that down really well. Next, I'm going to take the largest die and I die cut a piece of white cardstock, and that piece is just another shadow layer for the sewing machine. So I'm just going to add the entire sewing machine that I've already put together on top of that white cardstock. And then I'm going to add this to a card base. Now, if you're making an album, you could always take that same die and make pages for your album. But I'm making a card today, so I'm going to use that die to make my card base. So I have a piece of cardstock that measures 8.5 by 11 inches. I folded it in half, and I'm going to have this card open on the left side. So I'm going to take that large die and put it so that the left edge of the die is slightly over the fold in the cardstock. And then I'm going to tape it down to the cardstock and run that through my die cutting machine. And that gives me the card base. So before I attach the sewing machine to that card base, I'm going to take the card base and pop it in my Misti, and I turned it over to the back side, and I'm going to stamp the handmade by stamp on the back. If you make a lot of cards and you don't already have one of these handmade by stamps, this is the perfect addition to your craft supplies because you can personalize your cards this way. And you can see that it includes 2 lines for you to sign your name. So now I'm just going to attach the sewing machine that I've already put together. I'm going to attach it to the card base. I'm going to put some glue on the top of the card base. And then I'll add the sewing machine on top, and I'm going to line it up with the right edge of the card base. The card base is a little bit smaller than the actual sewing machine part that I put together. When I close this, you can see that the card base is a little bit shorter than the shape of the sewing machine, and that's why I put the glue on the top of the card base and not on the back of the sewing machine itself. Here I'm just adding a little gold embellishment to cover up the hole that was in that blue flower pattern paper, because again it makes it look more like a little drawer on the bottom. So this card is now completed, and I also want to real quick let you know that it does measure about 5 inches by 6 inches as a completed card if you use all of the layers. So it will fit in an envelope made for a 5 by 7 inch card. If you're interested in anything that you've seen here today, be sure to check the description box for product links. And if you're purchasing at Scrap Diva Designs, be sure to use my coupon code Mears to save 10% off your order. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.